Thank you, Uncle John or Pak John.
Om John.
Om John. I met Pak Uncle John as my discussion buddy in one group of expatriate who discuss a lot of things, and one of them is the global affair. So Pak John, thank you very much for joining discussion on my podcast.
You're welcome.
John, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I've been here a while. I came here in 1978 as an engineer from New Zealand, working on a World Bank contract. I then had a number of different contracts, mostly with New Zealand companies, occasionally with American, financed by World Bank or ADB. And finally, I went into business in the quality assurance business.
Quality insurance.
We were servicing mostly downhole tools for the oil industry was our major income. And we finally sold that company, and I then was working independently with ConocoPhillips as a consultant in conformance and compliance, of making sure all the equipment was satisfactory from that they were to rent from their major suppliers. That meant witnessing, testing the equipment before it was rented by Conoco. And then I finally was discovered by Manpower that I was almost 70 years old and you cannot work after you're 55 in the oil business, which was a big disappointment, I understand, to ConocoPhillips and to myself. Of course, they offered me to work direct with them if I made a contract, my own company, which I tried for about 6 months and had problems with having a virtual office that the people from the Inland Revenue Department said no, they wanted to come and see 10, 12 people sitting at computers. As a fact, all I needed to be a virtual office was in case the immigration or somebody wanted to speak to me personally. Otherwise, I'd be out on site at places like Halliburton, Schlumberger, places like that, witnessing the equipment. So that's how I finally came to be unemployed and without any sort of pension, and got my what do you call them? Tatap.
What is Tatap?
The Tatap visa is a permanent resident.
Oh, permanent resident. Okay.
Yeah, got that. So I've renewed it the second time, and they say next time I have I've got a KTP number, which is not as same as an Indonesian's one. I had problems. I was able to join BJBS medical, which is appreciated, and so that's how I'm still living here. I don't think I'll ever afford to go back to New Zealand, and we're getting by.
Okay, thank you, Om John. So you are Kiwi, New Zealander called Kiwi, right?
Yeah, but, and as I said, 78 to here is
47.
47 years, but it's my Bahasa is not very good. My problem is my wife speaks English far better than I speak Indonesian. So
but with all your children, you speak also in English or Bahasa?
We always speak English. I speak to servants and people that work for me on topics which I understand, quite fluent in them. In my work, there's no problem, but I can't talk politics in Indonesian.
Okay. Also, you 47 years and most of the time speak in English. Okay.
Yeah, but I can watch YouTubes and I click on that to translate.
Yeah, I know.
I can read the characters at 2 times speed and understand what they're talking about. Okay,
good. Om John, because one of the reasons I asked you what is the topic that we will like to discuss. I know in our group meeting normally we talk about global affair issues, what happened in Ukraine, what happened in United States, what happened in China, USA. That's not normally topic when I came there for the discussion. I think the last time I have discussion with you is about what happened in the Middle East. Yeah, that's what happened in the Middle East. But now let's we start with the topic of nuclear power plants that Indonesia actually aim to have a nuclear power plant, but until today it's not happened. It's not happened. What do you think, or you have a proposal, or you have a statement for, or make a case on what happened in Indonesia?
I'm a bit disappointed at the slow rate that they're progressing. I've visited Thorcon, Indonesia, a couple of times. They're very enthusiastic people. They've now got the site for the first site. The intention to have what they call a PPA, which is a power purchasing agreement, which means Thorcon Indonesia will pay all the cost of establishing it, getting it settled just off an island, the first one, about 30 kilometers off Bunker Island. Nice, safe place, away from earthquakes and tsunamis. And it's a beautiful system, this thorium molten salt power system. To have 8 here in Indonesia would be great. It could have a lot faster. They can make the system that they're using to have them made. They could be making 10 gigawatt capacity per annum from a shipbuilding yard. The original guys that developed Thorcon, Americans, who's one of the base guys, he has the notoriety of building the largest tanker, double hold, biggest tanker in the world, and really cheap. If you add how much it costs for a double hold tanker per ton of steel, there's no way you can build any sort of power station anywhere cheaper than building a barge-like, same construction principles in, say, Korea, which the estimates are, if I give out any numbers to you, are based on a Korean shipbuilding yard that builds these tankers regularly and apparently can build about 20 of these a year. Indonesia wants 8 of them.
How many? Eight of them.
8. Each one 500 megawatt capacity. That's electrical. So it's a lot higher energy comes out, but what gets onto your power line is about 500 megawatts. Now, 500 megawatts.
Multiple 8 is 4,000.
4 gigawatts.
4 gigawatt.
Yeah.
But then one Thorcon, you mentioned it will be 10
One is 500 megawatts, half a gigawatt.
No, you mentioned, but Thorcon will have 10 gigawatt?
No, if they wanted to, the manufacturing supplier could make that many in a year.
Okay.
In fact, even more. A shipbuilding yard, they're so geared up for making big construction, like for tankers, double hull tankers, which is what they would have. Double wall, they're about 1.5 meters walls between the double walls. And the idea would be to have built that for the cost of between $800 per $800 to $1,000 per kilowatt cost of construction, delivered to Indonesia, Java Sea. That was the original cost that I'm still aware of, that haven't been changed since. To make them in Korea shipbuilding yard and towed down to Java and include everything on the power plant except for the fuel would be about $800 to $1,000 per kilowatt. And these would be, the idea is that the only cost to Indonesia would be to prepare the site, which means that these would arrive here. They would be ballasted in such a way that they could float right up onto this prepared site, and then ballasted the walls, filled with gravel, or in critical places, concrete would be pumped in, but still able in an earthquake, which is what everyone worries about.
That's correct.
If there was an earthquake, these things can slide the sand content, it slides on the sand bed in the earthquake, so no damage to the plant, and then if there was a tsunami, which is not predictable on that side of away from things like Krakatoa and places, any major tsunamis, it has a 35-meter gunnel height. So if the waves were big enough, it would actually lift itself off the bed and down again. So there's no damage. And the beauty of a thorium molten salt reactor is that they are self-monitoring. You don't need to have any real competent person on the site. It's automatically adjusts for the demand. Whatever demand is sucked off, it's automatically adjusted to present the power. So at that rate, if they were to use it as a 100% supplier to Bunker Islands, mills and places like that, or in particular, if they did these for these new big things about AEI of making these big computer centers, they could meet a demand non-stop, 24 hours a day, for a cost of a pre-profit cost of $30 per megawatt hour, which is less than $30, which is less than 3 cents per unit kilowatt hour that you see on your meter. So that is cheaper than any of your windmills, I like to call them windmill farms, or solar panel farms. The solar panel farms in Indonesia are pretty useless because the electricity you can generate from them have an average of only less than 30%, maybe down as 25% because of the cloud formations here. The windmills, there's no wind in Indonesia to speak of, except certain seasons are very short-lived, and it will be a waste of money ever having a wind farm here. So the ideal thing is to have these one 500 megawatt power station. Sits on it's 65 meters wide by 180 meters long and 35 meters high. Now that would mean that producing 500 megawatts means that you've got about 43 kilowatts per square meter on its footprint. You compare that with these football field sizes. You know, this is about two football sizes per gigawatt. So if you can imagine that, you've got about 43 kilowatts being produced per square meter. If you have a solar farm, you're lucky if you get 2 kilowatts at 8 hours a day. If you're lucky, between 6 and 8 hours a day. So it completely destroys, that's the first thing that destroys these so-called renewables. I call them unrecyclable because I haven't seen any system where they're recovering all the materials out of these so-called unrecyclable renewables. Secondly, if you look at what they can produce, they're lucky to get one kilowatt per square meter. So there is your big advantage for kickoff, no matter what sort of pricing you get. I've tried to make comparisons with the one up in Sulawesi with their solar farms.
Yeah, so
I can't remember the name.
The name is one of the area.
When I initially looked at all this data, 10, 12 years ago, it was first floated, I think about 10 years ago. And so, like I said, those prices, like I said, less than 3 cents a unit, is based on continuous supply. Now, if you're going to be linked up to have to adjust your system, like they're having to do around the world for renewables again, then you've got a problem because you don't need to have all that electrically generated power. But fortunately, it's an automated system. You can have it run by itself, and when the load comes on other parts of your network because of your solar farms that you've got, it will automatically adjust to meet the outputs required on the demand. So the price for you're then subsidizing renewables basically because I call them Mickey Mouse systems, frankly. And so Mr. Trump in his latest edicts on the Paris Agreement probably support me in that ground. However, I haven't quite finished telling everything about them. the actual power system is molten salt. Now the initial plan is to use thorium, based at about 5 kilograms a day, is fed in as a.
But thorium, using thorium as sources is not yet proven by one of the power plant in the world, because they said there is on the stability issue. Thorium is not really a common resources for power plant. That's what I heard.
No, there's people that will tell you that it will never get approved because you can make atomic bombs, nuclear bombs out of it. It's a load of crap. It's so dangerous to play with thorium if it's left on its system that goes through the various stages of how it is hit by neutrons. Thorium, and it's a metal which is passively, it's what we call fissile, and it's fertile and not fissile. So it has to be hit with a neutron, and it becomes from thorium 222 becomes protactinium 222, and then after about 30 days it becomes uranium 223. Anyway, at that point, if you're out to degenerate and do other things, and it's not in a confined state, it will have a gamma radiation. But if it's in a power plant, it doesn't really matter if you get gamma radiations anyway. So anyone that tried to get in there to try and steal it is going to have a problem. And any sensible person in the world will tell you that it's perfectly safe because it's so noticeable if anyone tried to move it. So that knocks that down. There has been thorium used in America, and it's being used in the Gobi Desert by the Chinese, and no problems there, of course, with it. They're not using the molten salt direct, but the molten salt one is the safest, because molten salt, the system you set it up with, you put the thorium goes into an ionic form into the hot molten salt, which is lithium, beryllium, in Indonesia you're going to use sodium, lithium, beryllium, chloride. Sorry. So that is pretty safe, and it's set up in such a way that normally it's self-controlled by itself. If it gets too hot, what happens? Your generation of neutrons reduce, and it automatically cools itself down. However, in a situation with nobody there to do anything, and it gets up to the so-called hot stage, you can have it in such a way, which is the way the Thorcons are designed. There's a plug at the bottom made of this molten salt, which is not molten. It's in solid form, but it just looks like table salt, like sodium chloride. And what happens if that is kept cool by maybe the outside container of the system is a helium enclosure, and the helium is hit their almost freezing point when it hits a fan blowing over these safety valves. If you turn off that fan that's blowing over it, it will get hot, it will melt, and it will unplug all the thorium inside the container, and it will drop down into a whole ring of smaller containers, which means it's no longer viable to get any nuclear neutron reaction between itself.
Uncle John, I think I have ever seen the presentation of Thorcon on issue of that they probably have some contract with the government for building the thorium power plant. So, but I'm not sure where is that. That I know from you, it will be in the Bangka Island.
No, it's not Bangka Island. It's glass. What's the word in Indonesian for glass? Glass. It's Il Glace or something like that.
It's not Bangka Belitung area.
No, it's 30 kilometers from Bangka. itself.
It's an island, or
it's a separate island with a moon shape, with a beautiful half moon bay site, facing north, away from any sort of any geological problems or tideway or
30 kilometers from Bangka Island.
And it's 30. They'll just connect it up. The cost of connection between the plant and Bangka would be at the cost to Indonesian taxpayers. But that's about all, other than preparing the site for this to come in and float on there and sit there. These things can last up to 80 years if you're looking after it. The thing that controls how often you have to maintain it, and its thing can run 24 hours to 365 days. You've got to, after 4 years, the plan is you replace the container. What you do is you pump, there's 2 nuclear reactors, and one of them's empty and been empty from the day one. After about 4 years, you pump all the salt. It takes about a day. You pump it from one to the other, and it's automatically controlled by you. Add as needed. You add more thorium. Now, at the moment, they've got a problem with how it reacts. Normally, to start off the reaction of thorium, you need to have a something system of generating nuclear reaction. So what is used is what's called a highly assayed, low enriched uranium, and that means it's about less than 20%. The little problem with the Americans at the moment is they got this what do they call it, reaction with Russia at the moment. They're paranoid about Russia not being destroyed, and so Russia produces this stuff, and so does Iran. Now either of those countries can sell it to you yesterday. However, at the moment, the whole supply, or 99% of the supply of uranium to America is this high assayed, low enriched uranium is what is supplied to America. All their nuclear power stations run on it. And if Trump wants to go and have a confrontation with Russia at the moment and induces some form of taxes to it, that extra 100% tax would have to be paid by the power generator, who would then pass it on to the consumer. So they're shooting themselves in the foot. It's about the only thing they sell to America at the moment. Everything else, there's nothing else being sold to America by Russia. However, Indonesia is in the position that's now a fully fledged member of BRICS, which I like to abbreviate down to BRIX, because it's going to be a lot more, the extending of all these other 36, 40, 50 that are going to join. Now, it is a base member of BRICS, which gives us a position that it's in there with Iran, it's in there with Russia, it's in there with China, it's in there with lots of other, more than 50% of the world's population already. So I'm pretty sure that this is Thorcon Indonesia. It's no longer Thorcon America. That is, America supplies the technology and what have you. But to me, and I haven't discussed this with anyone in Thorcon Indonesia, but sensibly, I'm pretty sure those nice people down there at the Russian embassy or the Iranian embassy can arrange you to buy thorium rather than have to use a lower grade. If you don't use this is as a start and make your uranium, the highly assayed HEL, highly assayed, low enriched uranium. They will be able to get it that way. Otherwise, they've got to go to other means, and they drop off using thorium, and they use a more expensive way of using uranium 235. Now, 235 and a 238 uranium is peanuts. It's less than 1%. And all the cost of using uranium on its own is involved in trying to get that into to get it, enrich it. And all this debate going on with Iran at the moment is they got up to 5%, 6%, then they got it to 19%, and then when America wants to get angry with them, what do? Is, well, maybe we really do need a nuclear bomb. We better enrich it a bit more. They're up to 60% now. They won't get a nuclear bomb. Looking at all the data that's available, they might get the uranium up to patch in 18 months, 2 years, who knows. But it'll take them a lot longer to develop that into the exact method of getting the atomic bomb working. The world is at the moment bending over backwards, or Russia and China, chatting to Iran, and Iran has been hesitant. They've got edicts out there, religious edicts, is that nuclear weaponry is a no-no. It's the death of people. It would destroy the world. And the religious edicts in Iran are saying, no, we don't want a nuclear bomb. It's only these genocidal Zionists that have been pushing Israel into taking everything from the Euphrates Sea through to the Nile River, that they want to have it as their own, that's causing all the conflict in the Middle East. But we talked about that before.
Okay, thank you, Pa, Uncle John, John. So you put the context of what happened in nuclear power plant into the global context of competition between global power.
Yes,
related to nuclear power plant and nuclear power.
Really cheap power, because if they use the thorium is free. It's
okay.
If you lie on the beaches at Goa in India, or you lie on the beaches in America in Miami Beach, you get your Geiger counter out, you'll get the odd click. You're lying on your thorium sand. And it's so available, it's classified as nuclear under the specifications of law in America. So the people that want to mine, the only reason America isn't been mining the rare earths is because the rare earths come with thorium. So they have to package up all the thorium that they're digging out to get to their rare earths, is separated out, and they're sticking it in 40-foot containers and burying it again, saying, oh, it's just the same ground we took out, we're putting it back over here, which is ludicrous. They could be giving it away to all the power stations and using molten salt, which is so much safer. So walk away safe. You can't, they're self-controlled. You don't need to have people that are monitoring what the pressure is of the water is. They run at very high temperature and just near ambient pressure. With little pump that pumps the molten the salts around, the interface between the nuclear salt and the one that is going to take the heat to the turbines is just like the salt they use in those towers that you see in the desert with the sun reflecting off it. Quite safe, and I think they're nitrogen type reactor. I can't remember the formula for it, but those are the ones that transfer the heat. So another type of molten salt. So when you talk to people that can't understand that, expecting to purify the pollution in the air by saying you've got to chop down all the trees to make room for solar panels is Mickey Mouse.
Okay. I just want first, before we talk about the global affair, continue on what happened close to Banda Island. So the proposal is actually came from the government of Indonesia and Thorcon company, right?
I think Thorcon approached some of the more clued up people in Indonesia, and said, hey,
and it was expected not now, it's like 5 or 10 years from now, right?
Well, if you look at some of the earlier stuff on the YouTube and that, you will see that it's expected to produce energy from it within 18 months.
19 months?
18 months.
18 months.
Of starting up your having your computer. Now, if these things they take about 18 months to, one of them takes about 18 months to build as a double hold tanker section of think of a big oil tanker and chopping out a section of that and saying that's enough. We want 180 meters long section of a big oil tanker.
So it's floating tankers. So it's not building power plant like the traditional one.
All they got to do is to level off the beach so that this can float in at high tide and then they'll ballast it down, they'll add in gravel round into the double up the wall so that if an aeroplane ever hit it or anything like that, it would not have any damage. All the structural design damage has been done years ago, 5-10 years ago.
What I remember is, so actually we need to go to nuclear. That's also the decision.
Well, of course the world has
but we do not know the detail, when, where,
well,
and
yeah, we
how.
have.
That's what.
Well, I myself, nobody's replied to it, but I know originally it was going to be 7 of these. The original PPA was to supply 7. Now I see that's 8. So I've given them 8 ideal locations. You know, if you look at one in Bali, probably up at the north shore of Singaraja, somewhere along there, but probably they're a bit chicken about that. So there's a place just on the end of Java there, not quite on the end there, which is an ideal situation. I picked out 8 sites, including the Bangga one, and says, hey, I've looked at populations, locations, reactions from people and things like that, and I think these are really good sites. And one of them is up there in Batam province, you know, and because we could, if we stuck one up in Batam, they could do it within 3 years, less than that, 2 years, be exporting power across to Singapore.
Correct.
And they could have as many of those crazy computer centers for your intelligent IA built there wherever they want them, but they could be supplying really cheap power, better than these other crazy ideas. They got an idea of taking huge cables across from the deserts of Australia through to Singapore. And people are serious. I've been to the office. I drank beers with the guys over there. I think they just moved down one of their office. But to me, that really is Mickey Mouse.
Okay. Let's close the discussion on Indonesia nuclear power plant, because I heard the intention. The government said that we go to that direction. The detail I just heard from you. Probably 8 places will the destination. And I have interviewed one of high-rank official on the idea of close to Batam, even though it will be controversial issue. But I know that's the way to go for energy security. So President Prabowo is actually 2 of his main program is energy security and food security. And energy security meaning one of them today it's going nuclear. And the going nuclear, it's also one of the discussion. But this discussion, I think what he mentioned when he met Putin. So when he met Putin, I read in news, he's asked President Putin, how about making a PLTN in Indonesia? I think one of his question to President Putin. He met Modi today, I think today or yesterday, and probably that was also an issue, because President Prabowo liked to have that. But in Indonesia, this nuclear agency, it's actually under the BRIN or under the Batam. So they are the one by law to operate the issue. Yeah. And until today, I didn't have any official paper, have a grand plan to say that's what we go, because even though you see something about the abstract, what is the intention, but you need to see also at the same time the grand plan, the project, when you will find what you got, where you got funded, and where you get, if not Thorcon, if not Thorium, where you got the uranium 235, 238, and that's all detail, because devil is in detail. But at the same time, I know the way to go, because this country become a target for data, what they call data science, data centers, yeah, which actually require a lot of energy. Extremely. Yeah. And the only way you can put that energy so fast, it's nuclear power.
It's got to be nuclear, because these people just don't realize, you know, why is Microsoft there racing in there trying to get 3 Mile Island up and working?
Yeah.
It's a crazy system. Like water reactor, they went out with the Ark. I mean, they're not even up to Gen 4, those ones, to just rebuild. Okay, they're safe, but to build one, you've got to have this big concrete dome over the top to allow for the fact that the thing might blow up here, because you're running with your hot water, going through there 300 degrees, and if it explodes, it takes 1,000 times more volume, and so you've got a really high pressure containment. You don't need that with a thorium molten salt reactor, because it's running at a pressure of about 1.5 to no more than your garden hose. That's about it. That's just enough to pump it around the system, and the molten salt. So it's ridiculously cheap. I mean, Thorcon have been on about this. I feel sorry for Thorcon, because they've been tied into all this, saying, you know, we've got to now just run it on uranium 235, which is a hell of an expense. It's going to push that price up that I said of 3 cents a unit, because they can't use your thorium. You can only dribble the thorium in, and let's just use 5 kilos of thorium a day is great. And it's all that nonsense. And in American places, this molten salt is great, because what you can do, you can take all the thorium waste and recycle it. Instead of the recycling process, it actually puts it through a molten salt format. When you're going from using your fluoride, tetrafluorides to your sectafluorides and back again, the oxides and things, they're actually going through a process and say, hey, stop there. We've got we can use uranium. When we're talking about uranium, recycling 235, we can stop at this stage and use it as a salt to be added to their computers, and run them as consuming up the waste along with all that plutonium they got sitting around. They don't even need to have thorium in it. They got so much 235 they can recover, which converts to in the thorium reactor. It'll convert the 238 to 235 and all the other components. There's a lot of energy out there, and there's a lot of good waste. A lot of people don't realize there's some waste there that is very expensive, very worth a lot. You've got your medical.
Bapak itu ditutupin pintunya, ditutup sekarang.
You've got the beauty of creating medical isotopes. You've got your xenon, which you keep for a short period to lose its worst nuclear radiation. They use that on spacecraft for spurting little bits of energy out direction finding. So that's not even taken into account. Their benefits for the Thorium company, which is giving you this contract for your PPA, your purchasing power
agreement.
And so Indonesia, all it's got to do is say, yes, we'll have it. And Thorium Indonesia, I hope, will say, right, we'll get the go-ahead to... My hope is that it will just go to Koreans. But I know there's a bit of pressure to make these in PAL in Surabaya.
Surabaya.
So if it goes to there, you just expect it to take 3 times longer, because you can't expect PAL to make a quarter of a tanker in 6 months like it would take in.
So what will be? How many months or how many years you expect when they go to other places?
They've changed their date from the original date. We could have been getting power out of one of these next year.
Next year,
26. If they really want to pull finger and get stuck in with a high quality system of manufacturing super tanker hulls, they could get it out in 18 months, I reckon.
But that's the super tanker, the floating places, not the...
Yeah, well, the thing is,
the power plant itself.
No, the power plant's built in the tanker. As you're making the tanker section, it's a barge.
Yeah, but
and you've got on order. They're all standard off-the-shelf turbines. Two turbines
okay.
you need. You need two tanks. These are just manufactured in, if it's Korea, and Korea is the one that gave us the prices. All right, Korean shipyard. So they can do it. Have it all supplied with everything on there, ready to, with the power supply already ready to hook up. Press the button. And provided you put the fuel in, or what you do is you'll be putting molten salt without the nuclear thorium, uranium or anything like that. Which is what they're doing in PAL at the moment. They're setting up a system of running it non-nuclear, but to test all the temperatures and changes. Now, I did start before I got distracted about how long does this last for, and we started off with these two tanks. And what happens is after 4 years, you must replace the tank because the carbon, the graphite, it passes through graphite. Now, graphite degenerates, expands out, and does all this. It's got 5 or 6 years. So they say after 4 years, let's take this tank out, empty out the salts, and we'll stand it over here, this tank, for 4 years. After 8 years, it's degenerated enough that you've lost any sort of dangerous radiation from that tank. And that whole, not just the tank, but the little container that holds the tank, is lifted out onto a Thorcon-made ship, and they will come in with a supply with adding in another spare tank ready to go away when you put new. They'll swap them over, an old tank for a new tank. And so basically each tank has an 8-year life, but a lot of it can be change the pumps on it or whatever you need to do that may be necessary, change the graphite, and you're away. You're back to square one, and you can keep doing this, repeating cycles. Occasionally you might need to replace your turbines and things like that. They're the same thing that happens on a power station, on a coal power station. They're the same turbines. You've got, in fact, this is what's so interesting, is that if you design a nuclear, which the Danish people have tried to hawk off these little
Danish
are trying to hawk off these little container, 40-foot container type nodules they call them onion shaped. They want to move them to places where you've got existing coal station. Just stick one of these next to your coal station, knock down all the coal facilities, thousands of tons a week that are being consumed in coal. Just stick one of these as a heat source, and you still use the same turbines that are running. Your turbines run on the hot energy, the hot steam that comes through from the interchange. So that's one of the Danish system that they want to do, because they're not allowed to make nuclear power stations in Denmark.
Denmark is pacifist country.
Well, the Danes are stupid. They're just like the Kiwis, and they'll lose Greenland if they're not careful. My advice to Greenland is to go to UK and say to old idiot Starmer and say, please, can we become part of the United Nations?
United States.
United Kingdom.
Oh, United Kingdom.
Yeah, they get more defense than they will out of the slow Danish farmers.
Okay, Uncle John. So I think we have to close the issue on what happened in Indonesia. Now I want to have a bigger bringing into the global arena or global affair, because you prevent what happened with the nuclear war. In my case, I'm the generation who watched a movie called Terminator, and there is a Skynet. Skynet is what happened if there is a nuclear war. So there is a dystopian world. So it's not utopian, it's dystopian, which is by today, it's probably can happen because what happened in Russia, Ukraine. So what happened with BRICS and let's say G7 or OECD country, and also what happened with the artificial intelligence. So this is an issue, I think, for try to risk mitigation not to happen, then you need to be more careful on the decision for next generation. So my questions to you what will be the prediction on the term of nuclear power after Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump's intention is closing the pull out from Paris Agreement, so meaning no, not the green issue, drill, but at the same time, I think going for nuclear. So this is also things like what happened in Indonesia today, probably because of United States have artificial intelligence infrastructures, which is funded $500 billion by the private institution. I think it's the big company, I think Masayoshi Son. So the
Stargate.
Stargate, correct, Stargate.
That's not Russia.
No, it's United States.
Yeah.
What they call private AI infrastructures.
Yeah, some of us call it Watergate.
Why Watergate? It's Stargate is
same conclusion.
Oh, same conclusion at the end. No, meaning because the Stargate was funded by the three company, and the reason by saying that we need data center which is need a lot of energy, and Indonesia maybe play, because Indonesia is very big location, spacious. At the same time, if we want to offer that, we need to have energy. One is of course nuclear power, but then Indonesia by constitution, we are not a pacifist, but probably by constitution we are limited not to take a side on what happened, let's say China, Russia, and United States. What
1955 Bandung.
That's correct, non-alignment. That's what Indonesia, it's by law, we are not, by constitution, it's not by law. So even though Australia has a bit suspicious about what happened in Indonesia, but I can guarantee because of constitution, we do not have intention, let's say, to attack other country. But then United States, New Zealand, and Australia have what they call ANZUS, and
Five Eyes,
and Australia have also the nuclear power submarine, which is actually for China, it's will have a red flag, but not in Indonesia.
They'll never get their subs.
Okay, but then that's issue of global power in the region. But I know the global power, real global power, probably what happened into United States, Russia, and China. And the most closest with the Trump era, which is 4 years to come, meaning what happened in Russia and Ukraine. I know in my discussion with you, you are also an expert on what happened in Russia and Ukraine. So with the coming of Donald Trump, second presidential, so what will be the impact of what happened in Europe and in global, including Indonesia?